Gentlemen, welcome to Trailblazer Flight 119. This is your captain speaking.
If your next stop is Tokyo, then you're in the right place. If you're not going to Tokyo, then
You're about to have a really long morning.
Meet Brody Torrance. He is a commercial pilot and is running late that day, but he promises his daughter he'll make it home for New Year's Eve. Once on the plane, his co-pilot, Samuel Della, warns him about bad weather ahead. Brody suggests a safer route, but his boss ignores the idea.
The flight's nearly empty, so we need to shorten. Take it to 37, you'll clear that weather. Good flight. Happy New Year.
With only 14 passengers on board, the airline is cutting costs and orders them to take a shortcut. Brody is also surprised to learn that he has to transport a fugitive, Louis Gaspard, who's under police custody. After everyone boards, they take off without any issues. Brody and Delay bond by sharing personal stories, including Brody talking about his daughter, who's all he has left after his wife passed away. As the plane flies over a storm, things start to get shaky, and Brody turns on the seatbelt sign.
the seatbelt signs have been turned on. Please remain in your seats with your seatbelt secured. Thank you.
At first, the turbulence eases, and Brody reassures the passengers that everything's fine, just part of the usual flight challenges. But the calm doesn't last long. The plane suddenly jolts again, and Brody hurries back to the cockpit. There, Dele informs him of a serious problem. Lightning has hit the plane, knocking out its electronics.
Avionics must be fried. Shit.
They've lost contact with headquarters and are flying blind through thick clouds. With no way to send their location, Brody realizes they only have 10 minutes to land before losing all power. In a desperate attempt to find a safe place to land, they push through the storm, hoping for a clear view. Meanwhile, panic spreads among the passengers. The officer accompanying the fugitive tries to send a distress signal, but drops his phone. Ignoring the flight attendant's warning to stay seated, both of them rush after it, and when the plane suddenly loses control, they're killed on impact. With only 4 minutes and 30 seconds of power left, they finally break free of the storm, but it's too dark to see any land. Lewis, the handcuffed fugitive, notices the keys hanging from the officer's belt. The flight attendant Bonnie asks Brody what to do, and with a heavy heart, he tells everyone to brace for impact. Just when it seems they'll have to land in water, Brody spots land. With only 90 seconds of power and no idea where they are, they see only trees below, making a water landing seem safer. But right as the power dies, Brody catches sight of a dirt road. It's their only hope. With Dell's help, Brody manually extends the landing gear, and they manage to land the plane safely on the dirt strip. Bonnie breaks the bad news to Brody about the 2 casualties and quickly grabs the handcuffs key from the dead officer to prevent any mishappening. With everyone safely evacuated from the plane, things aren't looking too bright back in New York. At headquarters, the team scrambles to piece together what went wrong. David, the crisis manager, wastes no time chewing out Brody's boss for the reckless shortcut through the storm.
How much fuel did you save?
About 12,000.
Well, congratulations. That's barely tip money on this deal.
They figured that the plane had crashed in the territory of the Philippines, but they can't involve the government for a reason, which we will explain in a bit. So David plans to send mercenaries for search and rescue. Meanwhile, after their rough landing and no contact with the outside world, Bonnie hands Brody the keys for safekeeping, because clearly nothing screams calm like holding onto handcuffs. Gathering everyone around, Brody does his best to keep spirits up, assuring them he'll do whatever it takes to get them home safely. Brody and Dele check out the plane's electronics, only to confirm their worst fear: everything's fried beyond repair. Despite this massive setback, Brody's got an idea brewing. But first, there's a more pressing issue: those onboard deaths. Armed with the officer's gun for protection, Brody shifts his focus to the fugitive, taking a curious look at Louis' handy pocket knife, because when life throws you in a jungle, you better hope someone's got a multi-tool. Brody and Dele start calculating the search area, and it's not looking good. With a radius spanning over 1,000 miles, finding them would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Then, things take an even darker turn when Dele drops the bombshell. They've landed on Jolo Island, a rebel stronghold with 0 government presence. They're in deep trouble. Biting the bullet, Brody changes into something a bit more jungle appropriate and gathers the passengers to break the news. His plan: find the radio tower they saw during the flight and send out a signal. He decides to bring Louis along, seeing as it's always good to have a guy who knows how to handle a knife. Uncuffing him, Brody sets out with his unlikely sidekick. Meanwhile, not too far off, a local villager spills the beans to Datu Junma, the rebel leader, about a plane spotted flying at night. It's only a matter of time before they come looking. As Brody and Lewis trek towards the tower, Brody casually asks about the pocket knife because it's not your average souvenir. Lewis admits he's had some training, having served in the French Foreign Legion. Sensing Louis' experience, Brody keeps things cool when asked if he took the officer's gun, but doesn't give a straight answer. Moments later, when Brody turns around to say something, Louis has mysteriously vanished. Back at the plane, Dele works on rerouting power from the generator, and to his surprise, he actually succeeds. Meanwhile, Brody cautiously moves through an abandoned building, gun in hand. He stumbles upon an old broken phone, but manages to fix it enough to make a call. Reaching out to airline headquarters, his hopes are quickly dashed when the dispatcher assumes it's a prank and cuts the line.
We've gone down. We made a crash landing on... No.
Not one to give up, Brody reconnects and calls his daughter, quickly sharing their rough location before the call ends. Suddenly, Brody is attacked from behind. He scrambles for his gun but can't reach it. After a tough struggle, Brody manages to overpower his attacker, leaving him unconscious. As he catches his breath, he hears a gunshot nearby. Expecting trouble, Brody prepares for the worst, but it's Lewis who appears, rifle in hand, now ready to team up with Brody. Alerted by the gunfire, Datu stays vigilant. Meanwhile, Brody and Lewis, now working together, realize they're running out of time. Inside a grim room marked with blood and a camera, Louis checks the recordings, revealing the building has been used for ransom videos. With no time to waste, they find a vehicle and head back to the plane. But as they approach, they hear gunshots, and Louis makes Brody stop the car. They rush towards the sound and find Dele being interrogated by rebels. Brody is ready to act, but Louis holds him back. The rebels, believing no one knows their location, are using Dele to make demands. They execute a fleeing woman and kill her partner, planning to hold the others for ransom. The rebels leave for the village, but two men stay behind to loot. Brody and Louis spring into action, taking down one of the looters and interrogating the other, who reveals that Datu is taking the passengers to a nearby village and holding them in a warehouse. Determined, Brody sets out to rescue them, with or without Louis. At HQ, David receives Brody's calls and gets satellite footage showing the plane's exact location. He immediately sends a team to drop in as soon as possible. Before heading out, Brody notes down the name of the village where the passengers are being held, in case the rescuers find the plane. Lewis stays with Brody until the end. They decide to leave their vehicle 2 kilometers from the village and proceed on foot to stay stealthy. Meanwhile, in the village, Datu's group films the captives, documenting their names and nationalities for ransom demands.
Name. Country.
Matt Sinclair, American!
Private contractors, sent to the plane's coordinates, send David a live feed. They find the plane, the casualties, and a message from Brody confirming the hostage situation. Near the village, Brody and Louis see rebels preparing boats to escape with the passengers. Realizing the urgency, they move quickly, silently taking down several rebels and avoiding gunfire to keep their approach secret. Spotting the bus, Brody and Louis figure that the passengers are likely being held in a nearby building. Navigating the village's tight alleyways, Louis finds a sledgehammer and quickly takes out the guard stationed outside the building where the hostages are kept. The freed hostages quietly signal that there's another guard inside. As Brody starts freeing the captives, Louis handles the additional threat. With everyone freed, Brody quickly devises a plan. They'll board the bus and head back to the plane, hoping the rescue team has arrived. But Lewis spots more armed guards on their route. Trying to drive past them could spell disaster. With the situation critical and everyone relying on him, Brody decides to play the decoy. He surrenders, hoping his value as a captive will make the rebels hesitate before killing him. Brought before Datu, Brody tries to bluff, claiming that reinforcements are on their way. However, Datu isn't fooled. His men beat Brody, and Datu orders his execution. Just as Datu's orders are about to be carried out, the private military contractors storm the village. They engage the rebels with precision and quickly secure Brody and the passengers. Datu, however, isn't ready to give up just yet. He orders his troops to storm the plane. Shellback, the military captain, informs Brody that they need to hold out for 24 hours until the extraction team arrives. Brody, not keen on waiting that long, decides they need to get the plane airborne immediately. As the rest of the military takes their positions, Shellback warns Brody they have 2 minutes before the rebels arrive. Brody, busy patching up the plane, realizes the urgency. The rebels storm the aircraft, and things look dire until the sniper starts taking them out with impressive accuracy. Brody tells Shellback that once the engines start, they have just 2 minutes to board the plane. Lewis decides to stay behind, figuring his odds are better with a fight than ending up in jail. As he heads to the plane, Datu injures Brody, but fortunately, it's not fatal. Brody makes it to the cockpit, but with the electronics still down, they'll have to rely on their instincts to fly. Louis finds a bag full of cash while grabbing extra ammo. He faces a tough choice: escape with the money or stay and help hold the line. It's a dilemma that could make anyone question their priorities. Brody begins to turn the plane, urgently notifying David that they need a landing spot. Meanwhile, the rest of the military rushes to board the aircraft, with Shellback catching Louis sneaking away with the bag of cash. Seeing everyone boarding, Datu chases after the plane, trying to prevent their takeoff. Just as the rebels fire an RPG, Louis steps in once more to save the day. He expertly neutralizes the threat before Datu can fire another round, and Datu is sent tumbling off the plane. More rebel reinforcements arrive, but the plane is already in the air. Louis, having made a hasty exit, is no longer a concern. Unfortunately, their troubles aren't over. The plane has lost its right engine. With a runway visible on a distant island, they're rapidly losing altitude. Deli's voice comes over the intercom, urging everyone to brace for impact.
Help me on the brakes, Deli!
Despite the shaky landing, they manage to touch down right at the end of the runway. Everyone thanks Brody for his heroic efforts. With the passengers finally safe, Brody feels a wave of relief. He calls his daughter to apologize for missing New Year's Eve. A bittersweet end to a harrowing ordeal. Well, that's the end of this story. If you enjoyed this recap, be sure to subscribe for more videos like this.